Michael Thomas is one of the most dominant receivers in NFL history, or at least he's on pace to be. Nobody has more career catches in their first 4 seasons, in fact nobody else is even close, and other than Randy Moss himself, nobody has more receiving yards in their first 4 years either, and this is with 2 games still to go in 2019 and only about 60 yards separating the two of them. His catch percentage is also historically ridiculous, with nearly 79% of his targets resulting in receptions. Number 2 on that list is all the way down at 73%, and in terms of total yards per game, only Odell Beckham and Julio Jones can claim more than Thomas. The numbers are simply staggering to look at from any angle, especially since the Saints receiving corps has been pretty much a one-man show for the past 3 years. But ironically enough, I sometimes still feel like Thomas doesn't get the credit that he deserves for his greatness. I see a lot of dismissiveness among the media whenever his name enters the conversation for the best wideout in the league, almost like people are ready to use any excuse they can think of for why he doesn't deserve that title. They'll say all of his catches are against soft zone coverage, that he gets fed more targets so his numbers are inflated, that defenses are more worried about the run game so he doesn't get double teamed as much as some other guys do. You name the argument, I've seen it. But when you actually look at the numbers and look at the tape, every reason to doubt Michael Thomas as the best receiver in the league kinda falls apart. For starters, while yes, Thomas does get a lot of catches against zone where he sits down in the hole and waits for a perfectly timed ball from Brees, calling his production inflated by zone coverages is just downright wrong. In fact, this season alone, Thomas has more catches and more yards against man coverage than any other receiver, and he also has the second most touchdowns against man coverage as well, only trailing Amari Cooper. The majority of his catches and yards overall are against zone coverage, yes, I acknowledge that, but part of the reason why teams feel forced to play so much zone against the Saints is because they know they can't guard Mike in man. He's too polished a route runner for corners to keep up if they play off technique, he's too physical for most DBs to handle if they play press instead, and even if by some miracle the corner does play him well and get good position, Thomas's ball skills are so damn good that most of the time he'll just make the catch anyway. Other than a very few select corners in this league, there is nobody that can stay with Michael Thomas one-on-one, and that's one of the main reasons why the Saints as a whole are such a dangerous team. But all that being said, Thomas's individual skills, as great as they are only part of the equation because individual talent can only get you so far. Great receivers get great production on talent alone all the time, but historically great receivers like Thomas, they need something a little extra on top of that: chemistry. The biggest single factor in his ridiculous pace of production is his chemistry with Drew Brees. Yes, he's big, he's strong, he's quick, and he's polished, but you don't catch over 140 passes in a season unless your mental connection with your quarterback is so solid that you know exactly what he's thinking and where he's throwing, regardless of whatever the actual play call was in the huddle. While studying the Saints this week, I saw a run play that was called down inside the 10-yard line back in Week 8 versus the Cardinals, and before the snap, Brees saw Patrick Peterson playing off the line of scrimmage with Thomas isolated outside. Just by giving one little lingering stare at Peterson and the space he was giving, Thomas knew exactly what Brees wanted to do. The run play that everyone else was blocking for and executing no longer mattered. The only thing that did matter at this point was Thomas knowing, just from that one glance, that Brees wanted him to run a one-step bullet slant straight inside, away from Peterson's leverage, where he could get the ball immediately and power his way into the end zone. And that kind of play right there is the main reason why Thomas is so hard to stop. There's always 2 play calls every time the Saints offense lines up. The one that was called in the huddle, and the one that Thomas and Brees are running by themselves every time they see a certain coverage look. It's very reminiscent to the heyday of Ben Roethlisberger and Antonio Brown, where whatever the route is that's being run can change instantly even in the middle of a play, and Brees' timing on those routes is so perfect that sometimes he'll hit Thomas right in the hands without even looking at him. There was one play all the way back in Week 1 that somehow I never even noticed even though it was against my team, the Texans, but it's one of the best examples of quarterback-receiver chemistry that I have ever seen in my life. It's 3rd and 17 after a sack, late in the second quarter, and Brees identifies a zone defense based on the slight outside leverage of the corners on both sides. That alignment suggests that the corners are playing bail technique, which is a zone coverage technique, again from outside leverage, and in that bail technique they will be turning and running down the field while looking directly at Brees and the route at the same time in their peripheral vision. From that outside leverage, with eyes on the route, they can aggressively play any outbreaking routes at the boundary, especially deep down the field, which happens to be exactly what Thomas is running because, again, there's less than a minute left in the half and the Saints were trying to get into field goal position. So, Brees knows that this is going to be a tough throw no matter what against a bail technique, but he also knows that it's 3rd and 17 and they only have one timeout left, so they have to make this throw work even against a coverage that's designed to stop it. But how is he supposed to do that? And the answer, to put it mildly, is blind trust. Drew has to trust that Thomas will work himself into a position to both be at the sticks deep down the field while boxing out the corner from underneath him so that Brees can put the ball high and outside where only Mike can get it. But Drew also has to trust him to be in that precise spot at that precise time without even looking at him, because if Brees so much as even glances out the route before he throws it, Bradley Roby will see that and drive on it early enough to either pick it off or break it up. On the end zone angle, you can see exactly what I'm talking about, and it's downright crazy that he was even able to pull this off in the first place because his eyes are locked down the middle of the field, away from Thomas, all the way during this drop, and even up until he's stepping into the throw itself. He never turns to look to his left until the ball is coming out of his hands, and yet somehow he's still so intimately familiar with Thomas's timing and of course the angle of this route against a bail technique that his muscle memory takes over and he puts the ball in literally the only spot he can to give Mike a shot at catching it. I mean, seriously, to me, this play is fucking art. It belongs in a museum, and whenever Brees is getting his gold jacket in Canton in 5 or 6 years, I want it playing on repeat in the background during his entire thank you speech because it may just be the best throw that I have ever seen him make. Michael Thomas and his attention to detail, his chemistry with his quarterback, and knowing exactly where he needs to be and when, all of that effort made this play possible. Yes, physical talent makes him good, but his intelligence and his perfectionism, just like Brees himself, that's what makes these guys great. In the last 2 Saints games alone, in weeks 14 and 15, we saw how that mind meld between Thomas and Brees can make the exact same play have very different results, just with one little subtle adjustment. If you're a Saints fan, or if you just happen to watch a lot of Saints games like myself, you probably see some variation of this concept every single week. Thomas running a deep crossing route from the slot. They'll run it off fake duo, they'll sometimes run it off a boot if they're faking outside zone, you'll see it from trips or bunch every now and then. No matter what, at some point Sean Payton will find a way to get Thomas isolated so that he can call this deep cross because it's probably Thomas's most dominant and most reliable route. But how the play is designed pre-snap and how it's executed post-snap can vary wildly depending on one variable, the free safety. If the safety is dropping dead in the middle of the field and he's not rotating with Thomas on the crossing route to kind of create a high-low bracket, Brees will float the ball deep and let Thomas separate vertically late in the route to get away from the defender that's trailing him. And often that defender will also be aggressively trying to undercut that route, so floating it deep is a good way to punish that aggressiveness by putting him out of position. Against the 49ers, we saw how important that deep ball placement can be for Thomas's separation late in the route, and Thomas paid that placement off with a 49-yard gain in a critical fourth quarter drive. However, the very next week against the Colts, that was the Monday night game that we all just watched a few days ago, the Saints ran the exact same play again to try to get out of their own red zone, but this time it was against a different coverage that changed how it was run. Because of the corner blitz that the Colts brought off the edge, the safety rotation was not directly to the middle of the field, and as a result, that free safety did have inside leverage over the top of that deep crossing route. That little 5-yard change in positioning matters a lot, and it affects how both Brees reads the coverage and how Thomas reads the coverage as well, because remember, he has to process all of these safety rotations in real time too, so that he knows how to adjust his route. With that free safety being far enough inside to present a threat if Brees floats the ball too deep, Thomas knows that Brees won't be throwing it deep, and instead he's going to be leading Thomas to flatten the route down away from that safety. The flatter angle and shorter distance on the throw makes the catch easier, more reliable, and most importantly, it protects the ball from potentially winding up in the wrong hands. Again, this was the same play in 2 separate games in back-to-back weeks, but the ball placement, timing, and the stem of the route were all very different based on the coverage. These little sight adjusts on routes in the middle of a play are at the core of why Thomas is so hard to contain. This is why the Saints offense, with a 40-year-old quarterback, only one capable receiver, an aging tight end, and a banged-up Alvin Kamara, are still a top 10 offense in points per game, yards per game, third down percentage, and turnover differential. This one connection makes it all work, and I can honestly say that without Michael Thomas on the field, the Saints offense would be a very below-average unit. We've seen what New Orleans could do without Brees already this season. Obviously, with Drew, their ceiling is much higher, but the floor wasn't that bad with Teddy Bridgewater, and the floor wasn't bad because Thomas was still holding it up. They still ran the same offensive concepts with the same little adjustments and tweaks because Thomas was still on the field to help Teddy make them work. If he wasn't there, if he was the one that got hurt and not Brees, I don't know what the hell they would do. They don't have anyone else in that receiving core that even comes close to his ability. The Saints just paid Thomas $100 million last offseason, and at the time people were questioning that deal because who in their right mind pays a wide receiver that much money? But looking at the deal today, that might have been a bargain. This is one of the rare receivers in the history of the sport that truly is irreplaceable. And the notion that there are some people out there who don't consider Thomas a top 3 receiver in the game, let alone top 5, that's just blasphemy at this point. You can't stop him with man coverage, and you can't stop him with zone coverage. You can't rotate safeties to double team him, and when he and Brees are really at their borderline psychic best together down in the red zone, you for damn sure can't stop him from scoring either. He's flat out ridiculous, and quite frankly, if there was ever a time for a wide receiver to get a few MVP votes thrown their way, Michael Thomas would be it. For him, dominance isn't just a goal, it's a way of life. So, try as you might all game long, trust me, you can't guard Mike. Thank you so much for watching this week's episode, and a special thank you to our sponsor this week, ExpressVPN. And look, I'd love to sit here and talk about the security benefits of a VPN. There are a lot of them when it comes to protecting your data and making sure that neither ISPs or the government or just random people can see what you're doing. But I also know my demographic, and what we all really care about the most on this channel is football, so I'm going to talk about that first. As it turns out, ExpressVPN is the best way for any of you to legally stream live NFL games and NFL Network directly to your computer, and through the magic of an HDMI cable, also directly to your TV. And it's the best way to do that because a VPN allows you to change your country of origin when you connect to NFL Game Pass. And it's the best way to do that because a VPN allows you to change your country of origin when you connect to NFL Game Pass to any other country of origin you want. And the NFL Game Pass International version allows you to stream NFL games live in HD to any country that is not the US, the UK, or the Republic of Ireland. And that means for the price of a yearly subscription to Game Pass directly from the NFL, so yes, they still get paid in all of this too because it's still the NFL service that they provide. If you have a VPN to go along with that, you essentially get the same thing as NFL Sunday Ticket plus NFL Network for way less than what cable and satellite companies would actually charge you. And you can get all of that anywhere on up to 3 devices, not just in your living room TV. Plus, there's way more features on top of that. So it's the best of both worlds for any football fan. You can play back any game you want, any time you want, going back the last decade. You can watch every current game live as well. You get the all 22 for every single game going back to 2013. You can watch any Super Bowl you want from the past. There's NFL Network and NFL Films programming, both live and on demand. I mean, it's just perfect. It's absolutely perfect for any NFL fan. So if any of that sounds enticing to you, and it should because you're on this channel right now, Also consider that not only do you get all of that extra NFL content with ExpressVPN, but you also get the peace of mind that all of your data will remain safe and anonymous no matter what websites you visit, not just the 50% of websites that have switched over to HTTPS. That's something that people, in my opinion, don't talk about enough, that the internet as a whole is still way less secure than people think it is because only half the internet is on HTTPS, but that's kind of a subject for another video, I guess. But yeah, ISPs also won't be able to monitor and sell your browsing activity to advertising agencies, and hackers and any government bodies also won't be able to monitor your private activity and data either. So in a modern world full of security problems and anxiety, having that extra layer of anonymity is just a smart move all around. So, if more live NFL games and safer, more secure personal data all sounds like a great package to you, check out the link in the description at expressvpn.com/filmroom to find out how you can get 3 months of ExpressVPN for free. No more shady streams with weird ads, no more terrible refresh rates, just finally a way to get pure football streamed to your computer. Again, that link is expressvpn.com/filmroom. Go check that out. And as for me and channel news, I'll be back again next week with yet another Film Room episode. Not sure on what yet, but it will probably have something to do with all of the tight playoff races going on right now. Looking at you, NFC East, maybe we'll hit that again. So yeah, we'll find out what I'm doing next week, but stay tuned for that. And until then, later.